Right, so I can't do the topic which was advertised because this was short notice. So I had to go through my files and see if anything which I could uh, bring reasonably into the timing of the year. So because of the end of last week's Sedra, and which ends with Amalek attacking Bnei Israel uh, at Rafidim after they left Yamsuf, and because in the beginning of this week's Sedra, Yisro hears about Amalek and he comes all the way from Midian to come and join Bnei Israel and become a Gad Tzedek. So we're in between Amalek here and Amalek there, and Purim is coming in less than a month. So I'm going to speak about Amalek. So just the background of Amalek, briefly going right back to the beginning, Avraham and Sarah Avinu started Yiddishkeit going by telling the world there is a Borei Olam, a creator, and not Avodah Zarah. That's around about the year 2000. 50 years later, rough dates. Yitzchak is born, and he also follows in his parents' footsteps. He has he marries Rivka. He has twins, Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov again follows in the footsteps of Abraham and Yitzchak. Esav does not. So Esav veers away from the right derech in life. Somewhere along the line, the family of Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, maybe Yitzchak and Yaakov themselves personally, are approached by a princess from Seir, which is a neighboring country. Her name was Timnah, and her father and her brother were leaders of the clan, the tribe, whatever it was there, and she wants to join Abraham's family, Yitzchak's family, Yaakov's family. She wants to join in her devotion to Ribbon Shalom. So she approaches whoever she approached. Couldn't have been Abraham, he had died already, but could have been Yitzchak, Yaakov. She approaches them, says she wants to join, and they saw something funny there, and they said no. So was it right? Was it wrong? Chazal say, because it said no, look what happened. We see what happened. On the other hand, they felt there's something wrong there. She's not quite doing it the way she should be doing it sincerely. There's some sort of a negative ego streak there, but she wanted to join this family. So she's refused. So, but she still wants to join the family, so she will not be rebuffed. If she can't go in through the front door, she'll go in through the back door. So she don't know who negotiated the shidduch, but somehow or other she managed to get herself to become the Pilegesh, the concubine of Eliphaz, son of Esav. Now, a Pilegesh was, in a sense, a second-rate wife, in the sense that a man would have a wife, and she's the mistress, and they might take on another one or two women to help with the kitchen and the washing and the laundry and so on. And if she agreed, she would. She'd rather not be married. She would marry somebody where she'd be the maid, but she's married to the guy. That's the concubine, and she doesn't have any legal rights like a wife has. So she became the concubine, Pilegesh, of Eliphaz, son of Esav. It's a demeaning situation, but she, in spite of being a princess, of coming from the background she came, she'd rather do that and join the family of Avraham Avinu than not. So in a sense, it's the Gadlus, but for some reason, the Ovois didn't want her. Now, Eliphaz was, he seems to have moved backwards and forwards. At times we see he does great things, at times we see he does things that are not quite nice. But anyway, he was very learned. He'd been a Talmud of Yitzchak Avinu. So he was a great expert in machshava of the emes, and he's a Eliphaz of the book of Iyov, who says many very sensible things, very wise things. So she marries this distinguished member of the family of Avraham Avinu, and she has a child, and the child is called Amalek. That's the background where Amalek comes from. So he's a child of Timnah from Eliphaz, Eliphaz son of Esav, Esav son of Yitzchak and Rivka. And Amalek is brought up by his grandfather, Esav, as the Midrash Rabbi about it. And he poisons his mind against Yaakov. Hate Yaakov, persecute Yaakov, kill Yaakov, destroy Yaakov. Yaakov's evil, on and on and on. Whatever Yaakov stands for is garbage. Don't tolerate it. And he inculcates this into Amalek. So Amalek was brought up by Esav to follow in the footsteps of Esav, to hate Yaakov. And we have a Chazal which says, Halacha hi Esav soines Yaakov. You can't get away from the fact Esav has a natural hatred for Yaakov and will always have it. There will always be descendants of Esav who hate Yaakov forever. And Amalek is the peak of that hatred and persecution and so on. So that's where Amalek appears. Then he appears again last week, Sedra, when we leave Mitzrayim, and everybody was petrified by the Makos and the split on the Red Sea, and Amalek doesn't like this. These Jews are getting a bit too uppity, and they're trying to show the world there's a God. I don't like this. We have to diffuse the situation. So he attacks from the back, and Moshe points to Yeshua to go and fight. You know the story. Moshe goes to the hilltop with Hur and Aaron and Hur. He davens. When he's davening, his hands are held up. And in those days, everybody davened like this. Like we daven Shemona Esrei like this. They used to daven like that. So Moshe is davening. When he's all tired, his hands drop. They lose the battle. They raise his hands. He starts winning. They start winning the battle again. In the end, they manage to lachalosh. They weaken Amalek. But they can't destroy Amalek. So that was the first one to attack us when we were on high, and the whole world felt, who can touch them? And he came along and he attacked us. So Hazal compared it to a very, very hot bath. Nobody wants to go in. One idiot jumps in, he gets scolded, but in the meantime, the others say, oh, he can go in, others can also go in. So he led the way for people to be willing to attack Bnei Israel. So he was the first enemy when we became a nation. And of course, Baruch writes in the Torah that one day I will destroy Amalek. But in the meantime, I'm swearing by my throne, Hashem says, that I will wage milchama ba'Amalek midor dor. I, Hashem, will wage war against Amalek in every generation. So that was the first incident as we had as a nation. Then after the Meraglim, some people said, we did wrong, we will go into Eretz Israel. Moshe Rabbeinu said, you won't succeed. They did try, and the Amalekites destroyed them. Just before he dies, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Zachoyer, remember what Amalek did, and always remember to wipe out Amalek. So we have a mitzvah to wipe out Amalek. Other nations can be given options. They don't have to be wiped out. The Canaanite were told, leave Eretz Israel, and if you don't, we'll fight you, but if you want, you can leave. One nation we have to wipe out, destroy completely, Amalek. So we have to understand what's going on here. How can the Torah say we have to wipe out a nation completely? About 400 years later, Shaul Melech Israel is given the mission, wipe out Amalek. He goes, that's the Haftarah of Pashas Zohar. So we go to battle, he goes to battle, he destroys Amalek, but then he feels it's a shame to destroy all these animals. Let's bring them for korbanos. And he keeps one prisoner, Agag. He keeps alive Agag, the king of Amalek. The whole nation is being wiped out. He did the mitzvah almost completely. Only the king he brought as a prisoner. That night, because Shaul speaks to Shmuel, Novin says, Shaul is no longer fit to be king. He didn't do what I told him. He didn't follow instructions. go and tell him. Shmuel spends the night davening for Shaul, but Hashem said, I'm sorry, it's it, you can't do it. So Shmuel then goes to Shaul and says, bring me Agag, and they bring him to him, and Shmuel himself, the Novi, an elderly man, he takes a sword and he just cuts up Agag on the spot. It's a mitzvah, he killed him. However, Agag survived one night. That one night, he somehow managed to make a slave woman pregnant. He died the next day. This woman, nobody knew that she was pregnant. She went away. She had a child. And from there, the nation started again. And his descendant was Haman. So Amalek is still around. And then Haman decided to destroy us all. Mamash, to wipe out. Amalek wants to do to us what we've been told to do to him. Wipe out the Jews completely. And it's happened again in the last generation. There was again another attempt to wipe out Klal Yisrael completely. That's Amalek. Okay, so that's the background to Amalek, and the mitzvah is there. We have to wipe out Amalek, except we don't know who Amalek is. We can't go around killing people saying it's Amalek. We don't know who they are, but there is a mitzvah to wipe out Amalek. So we have to try and understand what is so terrible about Amalek that he hates us so much, and we hate him so much, and we have to wipe him out completely. Timche. Okay, so there is a source which says that the Yetzer Hara is the same as the Nachash who approached Chava. And he's got another name. I don't want to pronounce it because Chachamim say don't say it. It's spelled Samech Mem Aleph Lamed. That's the name of that Malach, who happens to be the Malach Amoris as well. And another name is Amalek, and another name is Satan, and another name is no, that's it. I've said them all. He's got many different names. Amalek is one of the names of the Koichos Hara. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the Koichos Hara. He created them in order to give us temptation and free will and Bechira and to achieve Olam Haba. That's what it's there for. So these forces of evil appear to different people in different times, in different places, in a different guise. But it's always the same Yetzer Hara, Nachash, whichever mask it puts on, it's always the same thing, trying to destroy something. We have to see what is it trying to destroy. It first appeared as a Nachash. So if it's called Nachash, you know the story. Then Nachash his task was to tempt Chava, and unfortunately he succeeded. We call it Yetzer Hara, and that's what we all call it the Yetzer Hara. We know that we all have temptations to do things we shouldn't be doing, and we know it's our job not to succumb to the Yetzer Hara. Once the Yetzer Hara seduces us into doing something wrong, then he changes hats and he's called Satan, meaning he goes to Shamayim and says, hey, look what he did, look what she did, and accuses us. So first he tells us, do it. And then if I've done it, he goes and said to God, look what he did. And then brings up an accusation in Shamayim. Counsel for the prosecution. So he demands trouble. And he demands a death sentence. And if he succeeds in his accusation, he'll try to take our life. He's called the Malach HaMoves. He's also called Samech Mem Aleph Lamed. Now, Samech Mem Aleph means blind. And Aleph Lamed is a name, and Aleph Lamed is a power. It can be used for a person, it can be used for Ribono Shel Olam. Aleph Lamed is one of the names of Hashem, but Aleph Lamed means a person, anyone who's got power. So it's the power to blind people to reality, in order to be able to convince us to do something wrong by blinding us to fooling us and blinding us. He wants to make us blind to Ribono Shel Olam. And he's Amalek. So it's all different manifestations of the same evil which is there to tempt us for us to overcome, appearing in different guises at different times to different people in different places. It's all one and the same thing. So Amalek is one of the guises. Now, Amalek also happens to be a nation in the world. So what's going on here? And that is that Esav, to start with, identified so much with the koichos hara, the koichos of evil, that he identified with that malach, and that became his malach. Bnei Israel, we identify with Ribbon Yisrael himself. So we are God's people. We identify with Hashem, we're his ambassadors. He identifies with us with him. Asa went completely in the other direction, and through his misbehavior, he managed to make himself completely committed to that malach, which is a source of all evil. So now it's Asa already. He's connected to the source of all evil. And then, of all his descendants, who takes the lead more than any other one? That's Amalek. So Amalek now identifies in place of Esav completely as the representative of Yetzirah, Malach HaMavis, the Nachash, whatever, all of it. He represents that in the world. So there are people who themselves have become identified completely with the Ra, and they live in the world. So you had a share a couple of weeks ago about Yaakov and Esau. I don't know what he said, but I saw the title, The Eternal Struggle. So today, there is that eternal struggle is led by Amalek. Amalek leads the way for it. He's at the front of. So basically, all those people who are anti-Semitic, and you don't know why, they're Amalekites. That's where they get it from. So there's Amalekites all over the world today. They're spread everywhere. And both Klal Yisrael and Esav can't be up at the same time. It's a seesaw. If one is up, the other one is down. So Amalek, he's the koichos hara, the forces of evil. So where do they get the strength from? If we descend, if we're on the seesaw and we move down by not behaving the right way, so then they rise. But if we rise with Torah mitzvahs, then they descend. Okay, so let's go now into more details about Amalek and how he manifests in the world today. I'm basing myself a lot on Tzadok Cohen of Lublin, who writes extensively about Amalek, extensively. So what does the Torah tell us? Remember what Amalek did to you, Baderech, on the road when you left Mitzrayim, and the key posuk is for us tonight, Asher karecha baderech, translated as he happened to meet you on the way. He attacked from the back the ones who were weakly lagging behind and were tired and exhausted. You, Bnei Israel, were tired and exhausted. And Lo Yareh Elokim, he did not fear God. Maybe he made you not fear God, but there was no Yireh Shamayim, and he attacked. So from this and other psukim, Rav Tzadok shows us manifestations of Amalek in the world today and what we have to be aware of. So first of all, he says, from the psukim about at the end of last week's Sedra, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw by his throne, and the spelling there, Hashem's name is not fully spelled out, the name for the throne is not fully spelled out. From there we learn, without going into details, that Amalek tries to bring division, divisiveness. That's what he's trying to do to us, to divide us and separate us. Separate us from who? From HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He tries to separate us from Hashem. In two ways. He's trying to detach Hashem from the world. He doesn't want the world to recognize Hashem. There mustn't be a God in the world. That's one thing he does. and something else. He tries to convince us that we are not attached to Hashem. He tries to divide us, separate us away from Hashem. So he wants to take Hashem away from the world and us away from Hashem. That's what he's trying to do. That's one of the things he's trying to do. So we'll see shortly what he's doing to detach Hashem from the world and what he's doing to us to convince Jews that are not attached to Hashem. Well, we can speak about that straight away. Can you see how in society today, Amalek is trying to take Hashem away from the world? How do they do that? There's no creator, there's no God, it's all evolution, it all happened by itself. He's trying to say there is no God. How is he trying to take Jews away from Hashem? Well, the amount of assimilation going on in the world today, when the majority of Jews in the world, 70% or something like that, it's marrying out and assimilating. So again, it's the same thing. That's the work of Amalek.
So do you take it that Hitler was from?
Absolutely. A lot of the statements of Hitler in Mein Kampf, which I've seen quoted, I haven't read it, fit in exactly with the descriptions of Amalek, which Chazal gave, what Amalek says, what he feels, and what he does. Mamash, literally. He spoke like Chazal say Amalekites speak. And he was trying to do what Chazal say Amalekites want to do. Well, that's simple. He wanted to destroy the whole Jewish nation. In the end, it's them or us. We are told to destroy him, and he wants to destroy us. He wants to do it to us, or we are meant to do it to him. Also, it says in the Pasuk, Asher karecha b'derech, which is happened to meet you. It happened. It wasn't by design. It happened to meet you. Because again, he's trying to say, there's no God, there's no control. Things just happen. It's all, there's no one in charge. It's all coincidence. It's all part of the same attitude. So basically, people, unless we accept that Kadosh Baruch Hu created the world, the Torah starts with Bereshis Bara, with the creation of the world. If Hashem created, Hashem is in charge, Hashem controls, Hashem does the whole thing, there is a creator. It's not blind chance. Hashem is the controller who runs the world. Amalek says, no, there's no one running the world. It just happened, evolution. So today's science is leading the way in saying it's all evolution. There's no God. So it's not a problem of just 3,500 years ago, Amalek. Amalek is there today all over the place. The dominant attitude in Western Europe today is that the world is a result of evolution. Most people believe it. It's scientifically, it's been disproved. It's rubbish, it's garbage. And they still want to believe it. It's convenient. The other side to it is a human being a creature with a neshama, or just a highly intelligent ape? So again, they think we're just intelligent apes. They don't believe in neshama. So Western society tells itself the world is a product of blind random chance, mutations. They speak nice science. And they've got all the textbooks and the museums. It's all in the name of science, but it's all trying to disconnect Hashem from the world. Drive him out, disconnect him. God's got no connection. They call it evolution. It's kfira. So we now have a very godless, soulless society, at least in what's used to be called the Christian society. The Muslims are not being so damaged yet by that. They've got different problems. Pardon? The Muslims? No, they believe in one God. No. Muhammad is a prophet. They believe in Allah, God. Allah is Eloah. He's our God. No, they believe in Hashem. No, they've not been as damaged as a Christian society, as Western society. Because Western societies, Esav is Amalek, it's much more dominant. They've got Islam's got different problems. Islam wants to kill us physically, but Amalek wants to destroy us completely, physically and spiritually, in every sense. So this is what Amalek is all about. The world is godless. They want to push Hashem out of the world. That's why Kosh Baruch Hu says, I swear by my throne, and he calls it Kes Yah, the throne of God, not Kisei and not Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, just Yud Hey, an incomplete name. Amalek is trying to cut me out of the world, Hashem says. And we live in that society today. So these forces of evil undermine our emunah and our self-confidence in our greatness. Because they try to tell us, you're an animal, you don't have a neshama. There's no God, and you don't have a soul. So that's already hinted at in the psukim, in the parsha, which we read yesterday. Not yesterday, on Shabbos. Okay, so that's one thing it does. Then it leads to something else. So that was the philosophical side of it. Then comes the emotional side. Amalek leads to depression, demotivation, and spiritual detachment. They say in the secular writings that depression is the common cold of psychiatry. Right? The common cold is the most common illness everybody suffers from everywhere. In physical medicine, in emotional medicine, it's depression. It's not a new thing. It's very prevalent today, but it's not a new thing. It's been there since the beginning. And it's connected to Amalek. Chazal said Amalek is a source of human beings feeling low. You don't have a neshama. What are you? You're a nobody. You're an animal. So when a person feels depressed, what happens? A person feels low, lacks motivation, not interested in doing anything, doing very much, has a low self-image, and very often indulges in binging just to satisfy themselves, the senses. So you can see this in the parsha. Asher karecha baderech. Now karecha, we said before, can mean he happened to meet you, can also mean he cooled you down. It took away your enthusiasm. It took away your drive, your motivation. And who did he affect? Nechesholim acharecha, the ones who were lagging behind, the ones who were too lazy to keep up with the camp. And they were exhausted. It goes together. People are depressed that don't feel like doing anything, feel tired. Velo yareh Elokim, no interest in responding to obligations. Yereh Shamayim, I've got a responsibility, I've got to do it. A person who's depressed can't be bothered. So it's all in. That's Amalek. It brings about at least a spiritual depression, if not more than that. And it's because of spiritual detachment. If we have a neshama, and we're Tzelem Elokim, we have a neshama, it's a spark of divinity in us. So we are God's children. We're princes, princesses, we are royal stature. Boni matem Hashem Elokeichem, Hashem's children. You're a very important person. You're Hashem's child. Amalek says, no, you're nothing. You're an animal. It just takes away the whole feeling of greatness which we should have. So we don't feel as great as we are. And we're not conscious of the divine neshama inside us, if Amalek managed to convince us. Because if a person realizes, I've got a great neshama, if I have a great neshama, I've got great responsibilities, I can achieve a lot, I've got a lot of potential, and Amalek comes and tells us the other way around, nothing, you're a nobody, you're an animal, you're just descent from apes. He makes us disinterested, and never, there's so many Jews in the world who just got no interest in Yiddishkeit. They've been hit by the assimilation of the Golus in Golus Edom amongst Esav, Amalek, and people just have no spiritual motivation. People who will only go to shul once a year in Yom Kippur and then they spend most of the time outside on their phones. It's just nothing there, Nebuch. They've succumbed to Amalek. Okay, so what does all this lead to? It leads to a spiritual coldness, a lack of karicha, cold. When we left Mitzrayim, the whole world was dazzled, impressed, frightened, petrified. Shamu amim gazun, they were petrified. No one had dared approach us. And then Amalek came along, like the hot bath. He was willing to jump in. He got hurt, but others now thought we can also follow. So he cooled down the world's attitude to us. But as far as we are concerned, we lost our self-confidence and we lost the aura of invincibility which we had achieved in Misraim. After Kriyas Yamsuf, we felt we are it. Nobody can touch us. Nobody can do anything to us. And now somebody did. So we lost self-confidence. So today it leads to a disinterest in Yiddishkeit. Yeah, but the Maisa, that's what the snake said to Chava. Yeah, Ribono Shel Olam said, but it's true, but just take it. You don't have to be so concerned about it. So you can see sometimes you can see somebody gives a wonderful drosha, if it's in English, a beautiful speech in the sermon. Yeah, very interesting. Goodbye. Not for me, thank you very much. Just lack of interest. And you go to some of these shuls and you find people sitting there that are totally uninvolved, never unmoved, uninvolved, like a stranger. And there's people in the general community. You try to involve them in Yiddishkeit in any ways. They pour cold water on the proceedings, and they're cold, no enthusiasm. They make others cold and enthusiastic. They're detached from the neshama. All this is the achievement of Amalek. Detach Jews from the neshama. Detach God from the world and detach Jews from the neshama. There should be no ruchnius in the world, no neshama, no Jews, no God. That's what they want. The Ma'aseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the forces of evil as the opposite of Hashem to give us the free will, and it's become very, very powerful. How many communities have disappeared in England over the past 50, 60, 70 years? There used to be communities everywhere. Middlesbrough, Swansea, Blackpool. Carry on. Where? Cardiff, don't have anything left, hardly. Edinburgh, never.
Sunderland.
Huh?
Sunderland.
Sunderland also. Anybody left? I don't know. But yeah, it's everywhere.
They're more concentrated in the main.
Because those who wanted Yiddishkeit went to London or Gateshead or Manchester. Yeah. The only other big one remaining, and Baruch Hashem, somebody's trying, but it's Leeds. They have the numbers there, but never. But I just hope this colon managed to do something, because people have been trying for years and years and have not made a significant change. Yeah, wherever a significant change was made, they left and went somewhere else. So this is what Amalek is out to do. And in America as well. Any kahila today which does not have a kollel is disappearing. The only kahilas in America which are having a chance to thrive are the ones where Lakewood Yeshiva, amongst others, sent out a group of young men to start a young family, to start a kollelim, and things are happening there. Pardon?
What should we do besides davening for them? I mean, keep that going. What we should go out do some outreach.
There's two ways of doing it. I'll speak about some of it later, but since you asked the question now, there's two ways of doing it. I'll tell you a story which happened with Rabbi Wasserman, Zichrono Livrocha, when he was in New York raising funds before the war in the 1930s. And he was, and in those days in New York, most of the shuls on Shabbos davened early, and the people went to work. Right. There was one minyan of young men who were Shomrei Shabbos, and they invited him to give him a shiur. So he gave him a whole shiur about the importance of Shabbos. So I said, Rabbi, we are the Shomrei Shabbos Kehillah here. You're telling us about Shabbos? He says, yes. Yeah, I'll tell you about Shabbos, because if you are strong in Shabbos, it can spread from you to the others. So if we are strong in ourselves, it'll spread. Whether visibly or invisibly, it'll spread. We'll see, we'll come to some more of this later. So, divide and conquer, the Goyim say. Separate Hashem away from the world and separate the Jews away from the Neshomas. And that leads Jews to disappearing. And it leads Jews to a low self-image and not having self-confidence and feeling I'm something special and I've got a special tafkid in life, a special assignment in life. Right, another aspect of Amalek, Chazal say, they connect Amalek to a pasuk which calls a person a letz. Now, a letz is somebody who is so arrogant and thinks, I am so intelligent that everything else is nothing compared to me, and I can knock everything down, I can make fun of everything, I can belittle everything, I can just make everything into nothing. A letz. So there's different sorts of letzonos. You can make letzonos of a person as an individual and ruin the self-image or the image in the eyes of others. There can be letzonos is when you use some sort of humor to destroy somebody else's position of importance. If you've ever seen the political cartoons in the newspapers, the way they draw the presidents and prime ministers and so on, it's letzonos. They're just trying to belittle people by making fun of the weak points. These comedians, a lot of it just letzonos. There's only one sort of letzonos which we are allowed to do. That's to make letzonos of avodah zarah. So we find a very coarse letzonos of avodah zarah by Eliyahu Hanavi on Har HaKarmel, when he challenged the priests of the Baal to a duel, sort of. Let's each bring a korban, and whoever is the true God will answer with a fire from Shemayim. You may know the story. So, so the priests of the Baal, they hidden somebody under the altar, Mizbeach, with a box of matches, whatever it was in those days. So when the time came and they prayed to the Baal, he would just strike a light, and the people would think the fire came from the Baal. But of course, Rosh sent a snake who bit him, and he died. And then they were screaming and shouting, Baal, Baal, help, Baal, help. Nothing was happening. So they also say, yeah, maybe he's sleeping, or maybe, I tell you what, he must be in the toilet. He must be constipated. So that's making letzonos of the idol. Eliyahu Hanavi said those words in public. When he smashed, yeah, but this was a bit more coarse to say so. Anyway, so that's letzonos. By saying that the toilet, that the God is in the toilet, it sort of shatters the image which they have of them. Anyway, that's letzonos. Shatter an image with humor and just putting down. So a letz is somebody who's I can't accept the importance, your importance as a person, God's importance in the world, and I want to break it down because I'm so intelligent that nothing can escape me. And if I don't understand this, it can't be real. I don't like it, and I'm going to knock it down. So, Latonus, that's Amalek is again, to cheapen others, cheapen values, cheapen Hashem, cheapen religion, cheapen people, cheapen Jews. And unfortunately, there are Jewish comedians who don't quite fit into the halakha. So this arrogance is a source of denial of ruchnius, of spiritual, and of Hashem. It's an arrogance. It leads to atheism. And again, Amalek is behind all this. So all these are characteristics of Amalek which Chazal have identified. And then he says the pasuk V'lo yara Elohim, which can be applied to Amalek. They have no respect for Hashem. They don't want to be aware of Hashem. Then they say there is no God. So how can they have Yerushalayim? There isn't a God. Lo yara Elohim, no respect or awareness for Hashem. So we've been given 5 points of negativity about Amalek. He tries to separate Hashem from the world and Jews from Hashem. He tries to make people at least spiritually depressed and lack motivation and lack motivation, spiritual detachment. He tries and succeeds in making people spiritually cold, disinterested, just cold. May not be depressed, but they're cold. He tries to make people arrogant to the point they will deny Hashem because they're too great to accept that. And lo yara Elohim, no Yerushalayim, disdain for Hashem. So those are the 5 points which I found in mainly of Tzadok HaKohen. He draws attention to the 5 manifestations of Amalek in the world today around us. And he was before the days of big time evolution. It was already around. He doesn't refer to those things, but maybe he was aware of it. But it's certainly become much stronger in the past since he passed away 120 years ago. Okay, so the solution, like you asked, where did it all start? Again, in last week's Sedra, Vayavo Amalek vayilochem in Israel berefidim. He came and he fought us in Refidim. Why is a place called Refidim? Say Chazal, the word Raf, Resh Pei in Hebrew means weak. Raf means weak. We use it in the positive sense. Rafua. What's Rafua? To weaken the illness and make the person healthy again. The Malach of Rafua is Raphael. Is Hashem's agent to soften the illness, to make the illness weaker and help a person recover. So the place called Refidim, Chazal say, Rafu Yedehim Midivra Torah. Bnei Israel slackened, were weak in their efforts to study Torah. They left Mitzrayim. They're meant to be working on themselves towards Har Sinai, and they were, but there came a point when they were exhausted, and they slackened, and they didn't. And that's the first battle took place. So from here we see that Amalek succeeds to some extent, to the extent that we are weak in Torah study, Amalek succeeds. So the whole source of allowing Amalek entry into our systems is laxity in Torah study. That leads us to detachment from Hashem, and that leads to all the other Amalek consequences. I've got a friend who was brought up in Lisbon, and he said, we had everything. We had shuls, we had an old age home, we had a Chevra Kadisha, we had everything. There's one thing we didn't have. We didn't have a Jewish school, and now it's all finished. The whole Kehillah, there's hardly anything left. They had everything, but not the schools. There was no Talmud Torah.
So you're saying education is the
The first thing is Torah education, the first thing. Whereas Torah education, that weakens Amalek. There's a matter somewhere, I've forgotten in which, I think it was in Roman times. Yeah, it was in Roman times. There was somebody wanted to attack and destroy the Jewish nation. And a very wise Goisha philosopher said to them, so long as they've got schools where the children learn their Torah, you'll never be able to overcome them. Hitler once said, if one Jewish child survives and goes on to study the religion, we have failed in our mission. He envisaged killing everybody except for one Jewish child and still would not have succeeded. He was right. So if Amalek succeeds spiritually, then he attacks physically, and then we attacked. So all attacks which we receive from the enemy are the result of our having slackened first in Torah, and that leads to all the other 5 sort of drops, and Amalek is there. And again, at Purim time, we were threatened. There was something wrong with us. So what was the solution? What did Esther say? Tanis, daven. And in fact, the Medrash says that Haman went to get hold of Mordechai when the king told him to put Mordechai in the horse and take him around the town, and he found him teaching the little boys about the Minchas HaOmer. And he realized, but by then he knew he was on the way down, and he realized if these kids are learning Torah, he knew already that he's not going to make it. So what did Mordechai and Esther, mainly Esther, but Mordechai and Esther, what did they institute a Purim time because we managed to overcome Amalek? First of all, they wrote the Megillah. That's more Torah study, another book to learn. All right, they increased Talmud Torah. Secondly, Mishta v'simcha. Don't be depressed. Be happy, rejoice, recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world, he's looking after us. Mishta v'simcha. And then Mishlach Monos and Manton Slav Yonim. Unite with other Jews, and then you unite with HaKadosh Baruch Hu by uniting all together. Don't be divided from Hashem. Don't be. That's it's the only answer. So you ask, what can we do? If we support Torah, that already sends out the right sort of vibes around the world. So, in conclusion, Amalek is the embodiment of a spiritual negative reality, the forces of evil. Hashem made them to tempt us for us to overcome. That is our challenge. And his first line of attack is to discourage us, cool us down, don't stop us learning Torah. And then the rest follows. So Jews who don't have Torah are prone to be told that there is no God in the world. And they don't have the answer because they're prone to be told that they are just descends from apes and they've got no neshama. How can they know the difference? They're going to be at least spiritually depressed and lack of motivation for Yiddishkeit, for spiritual matters. They'll be cold in their attitude to Yiddishkeit. They can become arrogant and think they know best. There are unfortunately Jewish Rishonim who think they know best, reformers and left-wingers, and they're constantly trying to attack and put down the Haredim. And Lo Yarei Elokim, to take over Yerushalayim. So we want to keep Amalek at bay. We have to learn Torah regularly. And thank you, Mrs. Wilson, for organizing regular Torah studies and keeping Amalek at bay.